An alcoholic named Robert.
Hello, Robert.
Hi, everybody. Grateful to be here. Thank you, Chuck. Means a lot. I was at my house last night. I was looking at this photo that my mother had given me, and when I was like 2 weeks old or something like that. I looked on the back of it, and it had Saul's photography on there, and it was something that Chuck and I have had that connection before he was even born, I guess, with his father. And I heard a lot about his father. I got to know his family, his mother. Yeah, she's a wonderful lady, and I think this journey we've been on with Chuck and I in recovery it's just been a neat experience. And he talked about not giving up on him. And for me, I just always have had the belief that if this thing will work for me, and I felt like I was a hopeless case. If this thing will work for me, I believe that it will work for anybody. And I have hope for every man and woman who walks in the doors. I really do. And I was talking with Abraham before the meeting, and he mentioned that he's not a one-chip wonder, so to speak. Come in and picked up one white chip and, just followed the path. That's my experiences as well. The very first time that I was able to come to these rooms, I didn't want to drink anymore. I just did not. But I was in and out of the rooms for several years. I've got a chronic disease. I know that today. I thought I just had a drinking problem when I got here. But today I realize I've got a chronic illness that requires daily treatment. And it requires more than just being abstinent from whatever alcohol or other drugs I've been putting in me. And I didn't get that initially. I was fortunate enough to get sober when I was very young. And back then, there was a lot of talk about it being a disease, but today there's a lot of scientific evidence to back that up. But I was fortunate enough for myself to come to believe that it was, and that I had it. Somebody was able to show me the disease of addiction. I was able to see the symptoms that I had. And I came to believe I had it. And that was a turning point for me. From that day forward, I began to treat it as a disease. And, I say it all the time. I believe it to be true. It's not just a cliche that my disease is not impressed with how long I've been sober. I know other people are. I know that I used to be when I first started coming to meetings and I saw these old timers, which I have become now, around the rooms, and I got to see the miracle happening for them. And I thought, and I see these guys coming back to meetings all the time, and I just figured, I was a young guy, and I just figured they didn't have anything else to do. I figured they did not have a life to live, basically, and just coming. But today, for me, I think that the program Alcoholics Anonymous is the best thing that's ever happened for me. Certainly getting my choice back in a treatment facility was a great opportunity, but being able to maintain that, and not only maintain that, but to have a life better than I could certainly ever make happen on my own. On my very best days of trying to make things happen, force the issue, manipulate things to happen, that's miraculous, Brent and I got to have a meeting before the meeting, and just to think about, he asked me, did you ever imagine you would have this life when you were this age? And I didn't. It's kind of like the book says, I would have, if I would have written my list of expectations, I would have been shortchanging myself by a long shot of God, just a wonderful life as a result of this. And, I'll tell you a little bit about what it was like for me, what happened and what it's like today. And what it was like for me coming up, I came up in a really, really good home, a really good environment, loving, nurturing environment. There were 5 of us kids. I call my sister today. I call my sister, tried to call her all day long. I think she was out on the lake or something, but I finally got up with her and just to ask her, what was it really like when we were coming up? I wanted to make sure, I've been telling this story, and I wanted to make sure, sometimes, can't, like the book says, can't distinguish the truth from the false. That it wasn't just some fantasy I had about my life, but it was a good life coming up, and my parents modeled for me how to live, how to treat people. I've got a lot of that from the program Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a lot of that from my parents, and they were very giving people, and they seemed to be. I know my father was a very selfless man. He always took care of us. She reminded me we grew up poor, financially poor anyway, but we always had everything we wanted or needed. Let me put it that way. There was never enough of what I wanted. There was never enough. And as a matter of fact, my father used to tell me, because he would sacrifice a lot for me and for us. And I took it for granted. I always took it for granted. And I remember him telling me, Robert, I don't know, you're the most ungrateful somebody. And I was. I just expected that. I expected things. And very self-centered. I grew up with a lot of fear. I think the biggest fear, I hear it all the times in the rooms, is I wasn't good enough. I didn't measure up. Always felt less than. I wanted to be anybody other than Robert. And I wanted to be like my father. My father, he, people respected him. A lot of the older guys I hung around with down at my grandfather's store. During this time, the Vietnam War was going on. These guys, kind of my role models, but they all respected him. These were supposedly tough guys, but whenever he came around, they learned to respect that. And so I wanted to be like him. I wanted to, but I was scared. I was just really a scared little kid, and scared of everything. And almost, even later on, thinking about that these different roles I used to take on as I got older, most of that was fear-based, and I think for me, I talked about the symptoms of disease of alcoholism, disease of addiction. I think that self-centered fear for me, that spiritual thing inside of me is at the core of this thing for me, and I think, that's when I first began to medicate that, at a very early age. That was a spiritual thing. We talk a lot about spirituality here. That was a spiritual thing for me. It really did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And I did pretty well in school. I got a lot of attention from my grandfather. I hung out at his store. He took care of me. I spent a lot of time with him. He spoiled me as well. Mini bikes, motorcycles, go-karts, just, I'm talking plural. I mean, he was always trading up for me, and like I said, there were 5 of us kids, but he was treating me like that. And I used to work down there. And later on, this man that would do anything in the world for me, I began, it wasn't long, after I started drinking, I began to steal from this guy. He would give me anything, but that's just That was my mindset. I don't know. Always wanting more, and never enough. And that's just a symptom of my disease. That's for certain. I started drinking. I don't know if I was 11, 12. Mark back there jokes about I got sober when I was 12, but it was I started very early, and I started drinking. First time, it set up a pattern for me. The first time I was camping out, we ended up stealing this friend of mine's mother's liquor, drinking it. I remember passing out in the sleeping bag with all these ants crawling all over me when I came to. And the next day, it was during the summer, of course, but the next day, so hungover, and starting to set up a pattern of lying right from the beginning, about what I did, why I was sick. It was supposedly it's because I ate something, and that pattern to me, I had a lot of hangovers over the years. I mean, seemed like daily hangovers, but those were the consequences. That's the withdrawal symptoms. But I knew how to fix it. I knew what the fix was, and like I said, the Vietnam War was going on. These guys that I looked up to, that again modeled for me how to live, who I hung out with. They introduced me to other mind, mood altering chemicals. I've certainly got thank God, the only requirement for membership in this program is desire to stop drinking. I've got that. I am a sure enough alcoholic, and over the next 11 years, I washed down a lot of other mind, mood altering chemicals with alcohol. That was it, and it was on. And I know for some this thing is slow and progressive. For me, it was crazy right from the beginning. My whole life and thinking. We talk about a lot of times the hijacked brain at a very early age. My brain is still developing, certainly, but it's starting to get altered really quickly with alcohol and other drugs, and there's no question it affected me in a very profound way. But drinking became the most important thing in my life right from the beginning, the most important. And this loving, nurturing family I grew up, this environment I grew up in, was severed right from the beginning. I began to isolate from these people. These were very loving people. I had I had 4 brothers and sisters, and I began to isolate from them. We didn't hang out anymore together. I had a twin brother and sister born. I think what I was thinking about was, it hadn't been that long ago my brother died. I told, my brother was in this fellowship for 8 years. He was in this fellowship for 8 years. I got to see him get sober. We started developing this relationship because, I know for me what I did. I modeled for this guy how to live. I was his role model. He followed in right behind me. And, it was, I don't know, it hadn't been that long ago, 2 years ago or something. I don't know. Time is so evasive now, but I know that I remember telling the police chief that night, this bullet may have killed my brother, but I know addiction is what killed my brother. That's what killed my brother. And it did. I get to see him go back out after 8 years of sobriety, and I've got to see a lot of people this thing dragged a lot of my friends back off. And I'm telling you, there's a couple of, I don't know, the only drawback I know to be an old timer is just watching these people that I get close to die. That's, and that's true powerlessness. Watching them go back out and take them back down, there's nothing I could do about that. Anyway, trying to think. Like I said, I did pretty well in school up until then. School was not a priority after that. Even though I had to go to satisfy my parents, there was a lot of, I felt like I had to be one up on everybody else. I told you I had this thing about being less than. I had to be one up on people. That fear motivated me in a lot of ways, and that was it. And, I was so scared at times that I wouldn't back down from anything. I just wouldn't back down. I was too scared to do that, to even back down. And, I found myself in a lot of bad situations as a result of that. A lot of bad situations, a lot of dangerous situations. By the time I got to these rooms and I'm starting to think and seeing that slogan, but for the grace of God, I was kind of indifferent toward God when I got to the rooms. And I know for me, right when I hit bottom, that I instinctively cried out to a God that I wasn't even sure was there, please help me. That's for certain. And I started coming to believe that there had to be some power greater than myself looking out for me. There was not. It's not because I was special or lucky that I survived that war zone that I was in out there for 11 years. That's what it was like for me. Every day, from the time I was 12 years old until I came to these rooms, that's what I was involved with. Just a lot of illegal activity, a lot of finding ways and means to get more, and just my whole life in thinking. That was it. It's stunning to me to look at and to think that it had such a powerful effect on me. But I could see why, at such an early age. I mean, when you find the magic like I did, this thing doing for me, it made me, you can call it the fix or whatever. It fixed me, and it helped. It probably helped me to survive some. Probably, I probably would have checked out if I hadn't found alcohol and other drugs. That's the truth. I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. Anyway, like I said, there's 11 to 12 year drunk-a-log. That's it. We talk about it being progressive. I don't know what. It's not so much the amount. Certainly couldn't be any more frequency because it's daily. The amounts. Some people we talk about morning drinking. I may have been drinking in the afternoon, but I'm doing other things in the mornings, each and every morning. So first thing. Today, first thing upon awakening, what I do is make a decision, turn my thinking and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Used to, my first awakening thought was something else. It was something else. It was about, finding ways and means to get more. Or either how bad I felt or how to get that off of me or what have you. The last 3 years I was in school. I didn't graduate from high school. It's kind of hard to graduate when I'm not there. I averaged missing. It was over 40 days a year the last 3 years I was in school, and I would meet up in the parking lot. We'd get under the influence of something. We'd either go to the pool room or go to somebody's house. Their parents were gone, or either go lay up in the woods and just get high. And back then, I've got to admit, I was getting high. I did enjoy it. Certainly it was a way of life, but it was still working for me. It was still working. And it was probably shortly after getting out of high school, that it quit working for me. We talk about all the time about it stops doing for me and starts doing to me. That's what it did. The good times were gone, and it was just a way of life, and by any means necessary, that's what it was. I was hanging out in bars when I was 16 years old. I mean, it was pretty lax back then, and the last time I spoke, and I stood up here and I said, that I was born 58 years ago. It sounded strange coming out of my mouth, because what is our slogan, one day at a time? It passes by pretty quickly, and it certainly means don't drink one day at a time, but it also means to me, live one day at a time, to its fullest. And not to take each day for granted, as I used to take so many things for granted. I used to take so many life that, I just used to take it for granted. It's a rude awakening, I'll tell you, to come to, I remember starting as a child and coming to and seeing how my parents had aged, that 12-year run, and I imagine part of that aging process was what I was putting them through. Certainly, they had tried everything within their power to get me to stop. They had tried everything. My dad loved me, but he just was not going to put up with what I was doing. He tried different ways to do it. My mother, she cried all the time. They even used to argue about what to do with me. So what I did was, after a while, like I said, I didn't graduate from high school, but I'm getting out of high school, and I'm doing these other illegal activities in which the phone is ringing off the hook, and these people are coming by that my parents knew I shouldn't be hanging out with, and so I got out on my own after that and moved out into an apartment, and the same story. I mean, it was the same story. It couldn't be longer hours because it was constant. And as I think about that today, I think about how that took off, from the time I was 12 until I came to the rooms when I was 23 the first time. It's just, it's truly, it's almost like I didn't put up any fight. There was no fight in me. I just willingly went with it, and I was powerless, certainly, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know it. There was trouble with the law. I was always getting in trouble with the law. My mother, I say my mother because my dad would do what my mother told him to do. Basically, as far as that goes, is if it's to get Robert out of trouble, by all means, get him out of trouble. And my dad, he loved my mom, and he believed in tough love as well, but he would do what my mom told him. And it's such a manipulation if I think about it, the way that I worked that deal, it's such a manipulation. My grandfather, who I certainly loved, admired, who I began to steal from as well. I was stealing from my parents, started to do other illegal activity, breaking and entering, just I'm talking about loss of control. Not only losing control over my drinking and my using, but losing control over my behavior. There's a lot of, by the time I got to the rooms, and we're talking a lot about coming in with all these secrets and dealing with all this guilt and shame, that was me. I mean, it was overwhelming to me. You know, a guy who was raised with great morals, how to treat people, you know, how to treat your family, and I've been living the exact opposite of that. I've been doing things that, you know, for one, I used to judge other people for doing, and the other is that things I swore I'd never do. You know, and things by the time I got to the rooms that I didn't want to think about. You know, when they would come up and I'm sober, and I'd try not to even think about that. No wonder, you know, this kid with this low self-esteem had. By the time I got here, I hated myself so bad. You know, that was, you know, that's pretty tough. You know, to reach that point and, you know, wonder when that's going to get better. When am I going to be able to be happy, joyous, and free like I see other people in the rooms? You know, when is that going to get better for me? And that's one of the reasons why, you know, this recovery is a process, and as we say, and not an event. And I would come to meetings, and people would tell me, you know, keep coming back. It's going to get better. And man, I'm telling you, I struggle with this thing. I struggled with it for a long time. And I'm glad I did. I wasn't glad then, but I'm glad that's my experience. I understand when somebody else is going through that now, you know, what that is like for them. And I try to give them some hope that, look, it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. You know, just hang in there, do the next right action, have the faith, it's going to get better. I had gotten a job. My dad had a friend that got me a job at a bag plant, and you know, I ended up going to work there. It was kind of like a front in a way. It was kind of a front for me to go to work, but I worked hard, and thank God I worked in the facility. This place has got a union, and that's the only way I was able to keep my job. Place that had a union, and they actually ended up getting my job back for me a couple of times, and stayed down there and worked for 19 years. I was blessed that they sent me to treatment a couple of times. They also fired me a couple of times, you know, and yeah, that was bad. You know, I think with the progression, I can't talk about the progression of frequency. Like I said, it was every day, all day, or the amounts. You know, it's as much as humanly possible. What was progressively getting worse for me was the pain. It was always getting worse. The dishonesty was always getting worse. The self-hate was progressively getting worse. That spiritual disconnect from God and all humanity was progressively getting worse for me all the time. And I kept trying to get away from that. I kept trying to get away from that. And even people I'm hanging out with, they told me, you need to slow down, you need to stop, you know. And I couldn't, you know. I tried. I made some attempts. Went into treatment. The first time, 1981, in a facility in Fayetteville. Talk about the hijacked brain. I am sick and tired of what I've been doing. I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm going to try to sneak something into this facility. You know, I'm going to try to sneak something in there. That's powerful. That is powerful. You know, when I think about that. And I always assume that guys that are coming into the facility I work at are going to do the right thing, you know. What am I thinking, you know? But I was serious about stopping then. I mean, the pain had become so great. You know, we talk all the time about, you know, I hear it, I've heard it over the years about young people coming in and whether they've had enough or what have you. I don't know about them. I know about for me at 23, I was in so much inner pain, so much inner conflict going on within me that I had no choice but to reach out and or either check out. That was it. It was a lot of pain, and I reached out. I called my mother up. I told her I needed help, and I ended up going to a doctor, seeing him for just a minute, going to this treatment facility. It was cost a lot of money to go there. Thank God I had insurance. They introduced me to the program Alcoholics Anonymous there. I'm very grateful for that. And I stayed in there for 28 days. I'm telling you, I needed some time away. I needed more than 28 days, for certain. I came back. I stayed in an apartment by myself. And I'm telling you, for me, talk about a rude awakening to be under the influence for 11 or 12 years, I don't know what it is, to be a child, to have no coping skills, to know nothing about a relationship with myself, God, others, know nothing about, how to have a friendship with anybody, how to accept things, I didn't accept things. I drank at them. I medicated them whatever way, How to forgive myself. How to deal with all this inner shame going on from all this stuff I've been doing in the dark. It was tough. It was tough on me. And I tried not to think about that stuff. At times I tried fixing up the outside to make the inside feel better. That didn't work. Tried relationships. That didn't work. Get some material things. That stuff don't work. There's never enough to fix that for me. That's a spiritual thing. I'm certain today I've got a mental illness that requires a spiritual treatment. That's it. Anyway, I came back to Rockingham, going into meetings. I'm 23. Next youngest one is Harold P., and he's like 10 years old, and the rest of them are like 30 years older than me. I've become one of those today. I understand that, but then I was a little different in my mind, and I always felt different, but I certainly did. I'm very grateful. We talk all the time about this program being based on attraction rather than promotion. The attraction to me was these people that cared about me and told me to keep coming back, welcomed me with open arms. And like I said, I'm glad the only requirement for membership was desire to stop drinking. If it had been anything else, I'm certain I couldn't have got in. I could not have got in. And they welcomed me in. And, I don't think they were judging me. I think they were encouraging me, and they did. And I came to meetings, and I was in and out of meetings, for a couple of years. And I'd go 3 months, go back out for a night. And man, I was not happy sober. I was not happy not sober, The thing of alcoholic alone is in bad company. I lived in an apartment by myself, breeding ground for self-pity. And that untreated stuff that was going on in me, never did an inventory. I think for me, the easier, softer way was praying to God and asking Him to do it all for me. Going to meetings and thinking that it's going to get better. I just don't know when. I've got that faith I'm going to get better. But I don't know. I've got a progressive disease. And mine is to the point to where just not drinking is not good enough. It's not. This thing gets worse. And that pain I was talking about was firing up even stronger. And I'm thinking I'm damaged goods. I'm thinking I've done so much that I've damaged myself beyond repair. And that nobody else understood. And whether they did or not, I didn't let them know. I always kept that stuff inside. We're talking about pain shared is pain lessened. I didn't share any, Maybe if I was in a relationship with somebody, I might get a little bit honest with them and tell them what was going on. But anyway, the last time I drank, I had been sober for a year. I picked up a year chip, went to meetings every single night, Oh man, I'm telling you, it was terrible. It was terrible, for me. And you're talking about being irritable, restless, and discontented. That's mild compared to what I was going through. And I drank again at 14 months and didn't think it could get any worse. Got worse. Got worse. And not so much, again, the amounts, but how it made me feel. And, I'd already, had thoughts of suicide before, but they're coming stronger, because, when you're not happy sober, as I thought, and not happy not sober, that's a bad place to be at. And thinking, and giving it a shot, I thought, but I really never surrendered to the program. The only relief I got was basically being at a meeting an hour a day, and the other 23 hours a day, I was lost. And trying to fix myself. And anyway, I stayed out there for 9 months, and by the grace of God was able to reach out again at 9 months. It was almost, again, I thought I was one of those unconstitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves, because I didn't want to do it anymore, but I kept doing it, and that thing, low self-esteem, is you just, failure after failure just kind of reinforces you are no good, to me. And that's what it was. But, I had an awakening when I realized what my condition was, what my problem was, My problem was not the substance I was putting in me. That's just a symptom, I've got the disease of alcoholism, disease of addiction. And it impacted every area of my life. And so therefore, I think for me, recovery has had to impact every area of my life. And, my recovery has to be progressive as well. I believe that for me. I don't know if that's like for everybody, but for me, that's just the kind of disease I've got. And started doing some basic stuff like the steps. I'd always heard this is how it works, and for whatever reason I thought I was different, maybe, or maybe I was just indifferent toward that. I don't think I was defiant. I just think I'm a slow learner. And I thank God for the repetition, of this program, because I'm slow to learn. I'm slow to catch on, and I'm getting a sponsor. Thank God that, like I said, I finally conceded to my innermost self. I was truly powerless over my illness, and my life become totally unmanageable. But for me, the key was coming to believe that some power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. What a relief. What a relief for me that was. And that is, I knew what it was like to be totally alcohol and other drug free and be stark raving crazy, in my thinking. And, that was, I knew my best thinking was still wrong, Making a decision, turn my thinking and my life over. That's something I've been able to do for the last 32 years. I've been able to do that a day at a time. Thank God for that step. That's how I start my day off. I try to be sincere about that. I try to be thorough, and I try to not only make that decision, I try to live that decision. So I can feel good about me, and so I can try to do what my higher power would have me to do, and be the man he would have me to be. To take an inventory of my life, that was a turning point. I was always scared to take a look at me. I always took everybody else's inventory, and was able to sit down and do that. And what an experience! That was something I really needed to do, and had a lot of years of unresolved anger in me, so many fears. And the guilt and shame was overwhelming me. And to be able to sit down, admit to God, myself, another human being, this is it. This is my story. I'm not holding anything back, the stuff that I don't even want to think about. I'm going to tell one other man. I'm going to admit it to myself as well. I'm admit it to God. And not only do I want to be sober, I want to feel good about myself, And that's what I had to do. That's what I have to do, To me, it's not a one and done thing. I have yet to arrive. I've got to continue this process a day at a time, Being entirely ready to have God move all my defects of character. I thought that I was until I started getting honest, and I realized I wasn't. Some of these defects I derive some pleasure from, and I had to get real honest with myself about that and realize that I was doing some things in the rooms of recovery and in this journey of sobriety that, my higher power didn't want me to live like that, and. So what I have to do when that thought comes, and thank God, I've got a thought a lot of times. I've got a choice of whether to act on it, and that's something that I didn't have for years. I just acted on it, and it was on, and the momentum was carrying me. But this momentum of recovery is carrying me today, and thank God for that, And it's one thing to sit down, be entirely ready, have all that removed, and to me, it's another thing to try to make some amends for my behavior. And wow, man, what a great step! Be able to sit down, make a list, become willing to make amends to them all. I like that. I harmed a lot of people. I harmed myself, and I had to learn to be good to myself. And I used to think that somewhere I got this belief that I didn't deserve it. I don't know. That's the big lie. We talk about distinguishing the truth from the false, and that's just a big lie. I do deserve to be happy and have peace of mind, serene, feel good about myself, enjoy this life, and to be able to make some amends. That's pretty neat for me. And throughout the day, to take a look at my life and maybe where I need to make some changes in my life, to continue to take an inventory of my life. And, I just do that. Meetings help me do that a lot as well. Come to meetings keeps me thinking all the time about what I need to do to get better. And, this thing and prayer and meditation, I couldn't listen to anything, really. I could not listen to anything other than that committee in my head all the time. But to be able to sit down, quiet my mind, and to soak up some good stuff today is what I need. That's really what I need. I need to have quiet. I need to know what my higher power would have me to do. I come to meetings, I listen, and I listen to others, what my higher power would have me to do. And it's up to me to do that. For me, I'm the one that's got to live with me, and I'm the one that couldn't live with myself. Today I can. I'm a much more comfortable version of myself than I ever was. I never was until I started doing the steps. That's the truth. And we talk, it's not just the deal. It's, the steps are the principles that make my recovery possible. That's it in a nutshell. Nothing else has worked for me, I jokingly say, but it's the truth, this thing is so simple, I almost missed it. It is truly a miracle that I am sober today. As many times as I went back out, as many times as I thought that I was a hopeless case, and to be able to have the opportunity to keep coming back and to experience this wonderful life I've got today is just amazing to me. It's really amazing. And, that's the message I try to carry to others, and, I try to be a good example of recovering alcoholic. I feel like I'm a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. For the longest time, I was just, I wasn't. I know I wasn't. I was a bad example to follow. It's probably one who you didn't want to be like. I did a lot of what not to do, how it doesn't work is what I used to do. Right? Really, that's the truth. I was thinking, thinking about, I remember on the journey up to this meeting one night, I was very early in sobriety. One time, I don't even remember what time it was, but my motive for coming up here was not the good one. I was coming to a meeting, that's a good thing, but my motive was to get out of the Rockingham meetings because I knew there was some girls up here. I knew there was some girls up here, and halfway up here, my alcoholic thinking was, it hit me, And again, I'm going to tell my age. I guess there was this bar up here called the Underground. I said, I can go there, and get a ginger ale and maybe get lucky or something. That was my thinking. How sick is that? How sick is that? But that's just, again, the power of my disease thinking. I'm grateful I got the opportunity to do this. Never know how it's going to work out. Always just make a decision. Ask God to use me in whatever way He sees fit. I heard this morning Mark was picking up his 5-year chip, and I said, wow, what another miracle that is. Brent and I were at dinner, and we were talking about willingness being the deal. How important willingness is in this process. And I've watched Mark go through this thing, and I was privileged to watch him early on, and the lengths he was willing to go to stick and stay, when I'm sure he could have thought of better things. But, he hung in there in spite of all the pain he was going through. And today he's a good example of a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm so happy he's picking this thing up. And again, 5 years, wow, it seems like the other day, right? It seems like the other day. Thank y'all for letting me share.